Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are supposed to have another session now where we are supposed to review where we've got to. Please don't run away because we're going to keep it very short. I think we've been very creative. We've had lots of ideas. We're still thinking about lots of things we've discussed. And my suggestion is that we actually sort of summarize, and we'll delegate the chairperson of the society to take some notes. Well, actually, if we make sure we say them properly into the system, we will actually be able to transcribe that later in the week, and we will get the Europlanet Society admin to actually make notes for us. So you don't need to, but so what I'm proposing to do is that I will summarize what I think the major things we've agreed and the things we've agreed to differ on and things we've got to explore. But I want you all to put me right, because I'm not going to get all this correct in one go. And I'm sure even Wim and I, as we try and do it together, will not remember everything. We certainly agreed that our plan A has to be a Europlanet Society transnational access, virtual access, access to the telescopes, and also all the apps. We want to try and keep all that going. What we have to decide is at what scale. I mean, what is realistic? Clearly, we cannot possibly run 30, 40 TAs a year and everybody doing all the VAs, etc., etc. That is just not tenable. So one of the things we have to scope out is what is realistic for us to operate independent of any space RI or any other central EU funding. So that's a major thing we have to decide on. What is our real aim, and to what extent are we going to lump everything together? Are we really going to try and have VAs, TAs, outreach, etc., all as one entity, just like the current RI? So that's something that I'm not even attempting to answer that question, but it's something that we need to consider. Now, if all the individual groups all have their ideas of how they can keep going, then great. But do we operate them together or separately? I don't know. Doing them all together has the one advantage of that is that we can still maintain one central administration of, recklessly say, a couple of people, be very vague, who then would be dividing their time between different jobs, so as to speak, looking after VAs, looking after the TAs, and they could actually have the overview, and through the ABSL and having a sort of a central office, we could hence all be contributing to funding a couple of administrative positions. If we try and do it separately, then we have to somehow fund all that. We clearly, in the TAs, I don't think the VAs actually do so much a peer review process. Bernard is, but yeah, if somebody applies to do a VA, do they actually have to go through an application process with a peer review? Yeah.
This is. I think it's just the case for Vespa. For
Vespa,
they have some call for new service.
Yeah.
And they go through the process of submission.
Yeah.
There is a scientific review.
So maintaining, let's say, maintaining Vespa as it is now, I'm not suggesting that we do. We don't need to have a peer review or calls or anything. Vespa can handle most of the administration themselves.
It was handled by Vespa.
Okay, yes. That's perfect. So we would need to have some administration for the observatories, some administrations for the lab TAs and the field TAs. Okay, so the whole point of why we're doing this is so that hopefully we can prove we can look after ourselves, so it then becomes tenable in 6-7 years time when there's another EU call to with including the matching funds to actually say, look, we prove we can do some of this on our own and we can support it, and therefore we can apply to the EU as part of the Space RI or what other options that come through. So models we have to consider is to what extent, and I think what we need to do is we need to contact all the TA leads and tell them to discuss with their internal administration, how are we going to cope with the matching? How do you envisage that happening? How do the administration, if their first reaction is, well, John is predicting his director says, tough, you can't do it, or you have to find funding totally outside the university to cover that. We need to know where we are. And that's something that hopefully within a month, we can get all the TA leads to at least respond to that. Something that we're all going to have to do is talk amongst ourselves and contact their national contact people within their space offices or whatever you're called. I mean, within Italy, you all have to get together. Within France, we have to have some discussions of the EU are changing their funding. We think what is happening with Europlanet is such a benefit to the community, this is going to be lost. How do the space agencies envisage us funding this? Do they have any advice? We don't immediately ask them for money, but I mean, the implication of talking to them is that we want money from them in the future, but we need to suss out what the potentials are. I mean, some may just say, no, go away. We're only interested in supporting industry and building instruments and being involved in launches, and we're not so interested in the science. But I think that will vary from country to country. And equally, I think as we talk to our actual direct bosses, that will also vary. I think the conversations within CNRS will be different to those within, say, just within my own university, because it's a totally different scale. And we have to think, how do we approach these people? And we have to communicate and maybe set up a timeline of, we prepare the case, we prepare some basic ideas, and I don't know, maybe we say in September, that's when we approach people and try and find out, can they put pressure on the funding agencies that contact ESA? That's something that's sort of a second stage we need to be at. We mustn't go too quick too early, because if we go to our funding agencies and we don't really have our ideas clear, we will look unprofessional and they'll just dismiss us. So we really need to have clear questions we want to ask. So we need to develop those ideas. And I'm now struggling to think what else we need to do on the short term. Those of you here now, do you think it's realistic to talk to your admin before the summer holidays and start to get them to think about these new funding models coming out of the EC are requiring matching funds? We don't know whether if it's 25% or more, but if it's on that order of magnitude, do you think it's realistic to talk to your directors and get the directors to talk to other directors on that time scale? Yeah. Well, yeah, but this is.
They don't want to add.
But this is the reality now, that things are changing, And we have to start educating our admin that, okay, they just consider the EU is a cash cow, that they're very happy to take their 25% overhead off everything, etc., etc. And as Bernard was just telling me, it sounds as though CNRS are going to actually sort of have an internal overhead of sort of 50% on salaries, which they're going to take away from the try and take away from the projects before they start. But this is something that is just not going to be viable, and the EU won't accept it. And if we do have to come up with some sort of in-kind matching, we have to start to talk to the administration and educate them that this is the new changing world. Barbara?
So I agree with this statement, because it will be possible to talk to some institution, let's say the university I'm in, or the Italian Space Agency. I can propose some things in this direction, and we can start the educational process.
Yeah.
But the answer will be exactly what just said. We just generally they are interested in because they get some things back.
Yeah.
So from the institution, I'm 100% sure, maybe 200% sure that the answer will be very interesting, but we are not doing nothing in this direction. The other side, there is some window probably with the space agency. At least I can try with the Italian Space Agency. But the point is what they will get back.
Exactly. Yeah. So
in terms of everything,
Yeah.
whatever we want to say, because if
I mean,
you
okay.
ask something, you have to give something back.
Right. So the big thing that we have to make sure we're ready before we start to approach all these people is that we make it clear what's the benefit for them. Yeah. What's in it for us, but also what's in it for them. And the sort of the heritage of what Europlanet has produced, and the fact that in your case, more Italians have applied for TAs than any other country, I think, in Europe, is a good thing to point out. That there's not necessarily in terms of the success, but they're close to them. More Italians have applied than any other country, and funding-wise, I'm sorry to say, I think the Brits are just slightly above the Italians in their success, but they're amongst the top, and it's not just the institutions. The important thing to stress, it's not sort of Bologna is involved, so they're involved in the project, but other universities from all around the country are actually applying.
Maybe we were spreading the voice very well.
Yeah, you did. That's right. So I mean, that's great, and I think this is the message we're going to have to make everywhere: is that it's beneficial for the whole community, and I think at some point we also need to mention the spin-off. So although we're stressing space science, you can always use that. You never know. The odd archaeologist has been involved in projects. They've seen things. They've come along, and so it's not just the space science. Although the Italian Space Agency won't really care about that.
There is another not problem, but there is another point we should consider is that all the space agency in Europe at the moment are, at least in astrobiology, they are in the planetary science. They are looking for the Mars sample return missions. Yeah. And there is a lot of competition. Where will be these facilities, these potential facilities, et cetera, et cetera. So why a space agency should invest money in some European Europlanet facilities in place to strengthen what, a facilities in Italy, a field site in Italy, et cetera, et cetera. So this is another point. It's like, at the moment, each European country the space agency of each European country is very careful in this direction. So I'm quite sure they will be not so happy to
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what to say.
The different, I mean, my understanding is that Italy, Germany, France, and the UK are all considering having hosting some sort of repository or whatever. But this, if I understand right, this is after it's actually been in America. I mean, is that correct? All the samples would go to the US first and then potentially later come to Europe.
Yeah, but they are discussing now.
Yeah.
For instance, I saw that in the last 2 years, the Italian Space Agency is investing much more than before. That probably was very few, but is investing quite a lot in science.
Yeah.
Sorry, is investing in science. That was not usual before. They was mostly investing like any
In
space
instruments.
agency in technology. So, and now what they are demanding us to develop lab, to develop, they are ready to give money to develop some things, but in Italy. It's like I can't go there and ask to support Europlanet, for instance, in some percent, unless
There are Italian
Yeah.
partners. I mean, are there no Italian lab partners?
that's again.
In the space RI, are there any?
There are enough, I think.
Yeah.
And but
Yeah.
this is okay. GMAP is still is like a University of Padova and University of Chieti Pescara. Bologna, it's me, and after the other big group is enough. Enough is probably we should find a person from that institution talking to the enough. That is a big institution.
But this is exactly the conversation we've just had. Is what really all countries need to do.
Okay.
Think about who from France is going to talk to whom in France, and who from the Netherlands is going to talk to people in the Netherlands. And we need to think about, you know, Anne Karine is clearly going to talk to is going to represent the society to talk in Belgium, but we need to think in each of the countries where and who is going to do that.
Okay, but the main target should be the space agency in each countries, because it's the big umbrella for this.
It's
And we have to guarantee something's back.
well, I mean, that's how we sell ourselves as providing the service and the high quality and the good publications, etc., and the outreach and the internationalized. We just have to make a very good good case for that. Easy to say, not so easy to do.
In France, for the VA, there is something that has started already with CNES.
Yeah.
But because they want to have also a service that will provide, in addition to providing basic observation data, they want also to provide products from space science. But it is in phase A. There are two groups, one for small object and another for planetary surface. And but the problem will be to get financing for that, you need to provide them something, some tool. But I don't know exactly, Stefan, what he thinks about, but there is a little bit problem of side, what is parallel development and how it will be connected. But at least they have, they want to develop things similar than Vespa or things like that, but more specific on some topics. But for lab experiment, it is different. They get financing when you are a COI or a PI of an instrument for analysis data. And then sometimes you can even get a part of an instrument just with a phone call, more or less. It is relatively easy, but if it is outside this COI ship, there is almost no special support, because you need to have a specific mission, except for the sample return mission. They put quite some money because they want to have something in France also. And there is already things that are under financing.
Okay, so we all recognize that approaching the agencies is going to be difficult, and it's going to be different in every case. And we realize that we've got to get it right, because we've only got one chance. If you said a bad impression at the first meeting, then forget it. So this is something we've all got to think about, and we've got to plan it, and we won't be doing it in a rush. but within your own individual institutions, it would be good, particularly places like DLR, who are bigger, and CNRS, to actually find out what's their reaction. Maybe some of the bigger ones might be interested because they can see the benefits of having access to all these facilities all over Europe that complement some things that perhaps DLR or CNRS don't have. I mean, you have, those places have many of the facilities are common, but there are probably half the facilities we're talking about in the TAs they don't have. And going to John's lab, for example, it's clearly, there's not really anything comparable in, it's not really anything comparable in France. No.
Also in CNRS, they are currently trying to organize the facility, the French facility, in a structure that is called REGEF. It is mostly coming from earth science, but now it's include also planetary science, but only part, not astrophysics yet. But it is not yet clear exactly what they want at the international level. It is mostly to make exchange between French lab in order not to pay new instrument, but send you to another.
Yeah.
Just but they will organize also the administration of what is the bills, the things like that. But it is not very clear currently. But here we can discuss to tell them that this network can maybe exchange with other through maybe Europlanet, something like that.
That sounds a really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds a good opportunity. Yeah.
I have a meeting next week to warn people of this. I can start to discuss.
Okay, that would be, well, please give us feedback on how that goes. Right. Any other comments from people? Yeah.
Yep. So I was thinking about other cases. For example, in nuclear physics, there are some world-famous laboratories where you can use radioactive beams, and they attract a lot of users. Because my idea was that we have facilities. Why do we want to pay by the to support the work by the facilities? Why not by the users? I know it's not easy, but for example, in France, we have the Ganil facility. In Japan, we have the RIKEN facility, and nuclear physicists are going there from all over the world and apply for some. I don't know the construction of funding there, but I know that from our institute also, it's a main branch to go there for nuclear physicists to apply for some beam time there. So they are real users, hungry for going there, and they are really interested to go there. And I don't know what's because usually if a nation is rich, it's a kind of prestige to give a lot of money to such unique facilities, because then this is a real center of the world, whatever. And probably Hungarian scientists, we don't pay for these beam times. We apply for them. But I don't know the structure, but the difference here, that this is a European network. It's a European research area facility. And Europe is probably not so much, at least it looks for me that Europe is not so much proud on it. So they don't want to do the same. Okay, so
I think I
stop here.
I think I slightly disagree there. In places like CERN, am I right that you can apply for beam time there and you don't pay? So there are European facilities that work the same way, and I think this is an and. We want people, by keeping our high profile and having a good reputation, as Fulvio said, people from Korea were actually coming to do field work in Botswana and paying the commercial rate, so to speak, and that's fine. We want that as well. But what we are hoping to offer is for maybe PhD students from one of the less wealthy universities in Hungary or wherever have the possibility to come and do an analysis somewhere where they don't have the funding for. And that's the basis behind the TA support, is that it's encouraging travel and interacting, but it particularly allows people who can't get the funding to do so. Because often when sometimes people have contacted me and say they were thinking of applying to Europlanet, and I will say, oh, for goodness sake, you've got so much money, stop being cheeky. You can afford to do that anyway. You shouldn't just be taking the money. This is designed really for, you know, for PhD students from wherever. And I physically put people off by saying, look, you got the funding, you can come anyway, you can afford to pay for it. And you know, okay, I'll give you a special price if you don't apply for Europlanet. I mean, that's the sort of things that I do sometimes to try and make the money go further. Jonas?
Yeah, just a questions for example, we're talking about so having this network. There's some value of just having that network in place and that you can access these facilities, even if, let's say, you don't have the money in the network to grant access to these facilities. So, for example, would in Hungary or other countries having this network in place be like a selling point to your Hungarian funding agency or the governments who say, like, I want to go there, but I don't have the funding? Would the Hungarian government provide some funding for scientists to visit that network that exists?
Okay. So my problem is different now. So we have a facility, and if
it's working. It's okay, Bella.
So we have a facility, and if this facility will not work for 3 years, then it's a disaster.
Yeah.
So this is well equipped. So it's not. It's well equipped. So even maintaining this, it costs a lot, and it's a high quality. We would like to offer it, but I am sure when I go to my director that we should pay for it, that he will break out in laughing.
Yeah.
So it's not the way.
That wasn't quite what Jonas was saying. That maybe try again, Jonas.
No, I'm saying, so if you would basically ask for money to go somewhere else, and for example, French people will ask money to go to your laboratory. So that's basically, you know, paying to go to your laboratories. But on the other side, what I'm asking is, if you have this network in place, so for example, there's a laboratory in, let's say, Germany, that some Hungarian scientists are very eager to conduct some experiments in. Would they, the fact that this network exists and there's the process in place and the peer review system in place, and the basically we will basically take the money and make the visit happen, but would that help for the Hungarian team to get that money from the government to visit that facility, or a funding body in Hungary?
We got a lot funding money. So we got a lot funding money from the Hungarian government in the last few years in order to build up this. So I don't see it very likely to continue along that way, because the economic situation is getting worse. So but it's a specific problem. But my idea was to ask. So this is a high value, what we have at this moment. It's a working network, which if without keeping it running, it's a real danger, I think. It costs a lot.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, that's part of the argument based around what Bella just said, would be that we can show what we've produced and how it was successful and how it's stimulated collaboration, and more collaborations have grown out of that. We have to make the funding agencies, the senior managers, see that there are lots of benefits broader. There's obviously benefits that people come to Bella's lab and use it, and it's in and produce good science and help fund it by coming. But equally, there are other Hungarian scientists who go the other way and go to other institutions. and that it's a whole package. It's not just saying, it's not just a Tomkey saying, oh, we need the money to keep us going. What we're actually saying is that we need money to keep the whole entity going, so that there's mutual benefits everywhere. And again, how we write and sell that is important, to get the wording right and make sure it's clear and people understand that it's okay. It will help maintain Tomkey's facilities because people will come and use it, but equally some people will be coming from Hungary elsewhere, but somebody has to pay some money somewhere, and that we have to find this 25% plus to keep it going. Okay, any more? I understand. I mean, in some respects, I don't think we could have hit a worse time to be faced with the EC saying we need to find. And obviously, one of the reasons that the Commission is talking about self-funding is partly that their budgets are not going to keep growing and growing, and they are also struggling for money. So everybody's looking to see where can we make the savings. But okay, I don't see a way around that. We're all going to be faced with trying to find additional funding from somewhere.
I see that, for example, in France before, it was possible to go to any other French facility without paying anything because it was paid by CNRS. Yeah. And we are still doing like that for French people that cannot apply through Europlanet. But with a change, it is now changing, and more, when you go to make an analysis, you have to pay everywhere. And this money you ask in project, in a proposal, national proposal, and there is not big difficulty, I think, to get the money through the national proposal. But it is a time constant that is much longer because it is a proposal for 4 years. So if you start the thing, you will not have people that get funds before a few years.
Okay.
To go, for example, a French group may ask money to go to Atomsky. After, it's need that the price is defined, that everything is well defined, and that the CNRS knows that it is necessary to pay to go there. Yeah. Otherwise, I will say, go through Europlanet, it is free.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunately our selling point up to now has always been all the transnational access, the VAs, and the observatory. It was free to all the users, and unfortunately, and even with that message, some parts of the community didn't apply because they didn't believe us. Maybe now that we'll have to say perhaps the user does have to make some contribution. This is something else we have to think about. Is it going to be viable to say, okay, we'll pay your travel, but you've got to fund your own food. I mean, okay, for example. I mean, so we're not going to pay we maybe pay your accommodation, but we don't pay the food. I mean, it's only 50 euros per person per day or something. But I mean, are those things that we can think about adding a way of saving small amounts? But I don't know, because what we found is that with the administration, it's the underrepresented states, their PhDs, etc., are always very worried about going somewhere because they have to pay money up front and they don't get it back for a while. And so they're then out of pocket, and they're scared about actually incurring any sort of debt. If we still pay travel and accommodation, but you pay your own food, okay, that saves, as I said, maybe only 50. But if we're offering in the RI, we're offering 10 years, so 50 euros for 10 years. Okay, that's a bit of a saving. It's not huge, but it's something.
There are other facilities in Europe that have this, let's say, these rules. So they pay the travel, or they say we offer like 200 euro for a trip. If you want to travel by bus, is okay.
Yeah.
If you want to travel with the airplane or whatever, is more expensive. You will
You
cover
pay
the
yourself.
diff. Yeah, and the food generally is not included.
Yeah.
So this is something is possible to propose.
Yeah.
As well, I was thinking, just a bit funny probably, but can we think about a project for mobility, European project, to use at least to cover the transport, the mobility of people? So we can potentially apply to a grant, European grant for mobility associated to the European infrastructure. I don't know if it's possible, just an idea.
And by money, you mean within the European Commission, there's funding particularly for exchange?
Still related to a network.
Yeah.
We are a network.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's possible.
Something to check.
Um,
Jonas, if you have it.
So the thing is, I'm hearing that one potential solution is that users pay for their visits. So you pay for your visit, like you want to go somewhere, you get your money somewhere in your country, and they pay for accommodations and the price of the laboratories that you're visiting.
But that can happen now anyway.
Yeah, the only thing that is not covered in there is the actual networking and Europlanet structure to regroup all this organization in one place and do the calls and the evaluation. So just to support that, we could have an organization membership that would be a lot less than if you need to cover the visits, like, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 per year, just to be in the catalog basically of services, and that covers basically the running costs of the operation. So the staff to run the Europlanet Society and organize the calls in at various times a year, and the peer review process. And then the actual visits needs to be supported by the actual research team, which just provide the structure.
But I think that would then wipe out many of the URS states, which just will not have the ability to generate the funds. I mean, because now if you can, I mean, if I wanted to, well, I just did. I wanted to go and do some work in Nancy. I managed to get the funding and sent, well, in the end, I didn't go. I sent a student. And that all went through because I know the people there and they could do the analysis for me. And that didn't go through Europlanet. It was all done bilaterally. And that those sort of things happen anyway. It's the underrepresented states, the early stage researchers, people whose PhD has gone in a slightly different direction than planned, and they need to come and do some extra spectroscopy with Bernard, so they can then apply to do that. They don't have they wouldn't have the funds any other way to encourage this transnational access. So there is.
But that's the root of the problem, right?
Yeah.
The wealthy country will not pay for it, and the EC is not paying for it anyway.
No.
So, anymore. So who's going to pay for that? This is the problem.
Yeah.
We are going to find a model to do that.
One thing that we haven't discussed much at all today is the virtual access for the facilities. I mean, not the Vespa, but the virtual access. But remote access. Yeah, remote access And that's also something that we need all the facilities to think about realistically, to what extent they can do that. What are the extra costs if they do? If somebody doesn't come to do the work, is it more cost effective because you can hire a student, and because the student knows what they're doing, it's only a couple of days work, and therefore it's not that much more cost? Or do you really need somebody there the whole time to do the experiments and watch things all the time? Or can the person send you samples and analyze them remotely from their home institution? These are things we need to think of. To what extent does that aid the costing, or does it make it more expensive? Clearly, we lose the training aspect, which
Well, I was just going to say that we had a bit. You and I had a bit of a discussion before about whether there is something we can do in terms of there's different kind of training, but we can do in terms of training to prepare people to go to facilities and maybe have simulated visits that kind of get them up to speed before they go. That saves a bit of time. Or prepares people, whether that's something, and particularly where we've got facilities that are similar facilities in multiple institutions, is that sort of some kind of training resource that we could put together and offer as a service to facilities that would add value to present some kind of value to them?
Okay, so I'm going to look at John here and start talking to him. So I can see that there are, sample preparation, how you're going to do analysis on a secondary electron, an SEM, or how you're going to use the ion, what they call ion probes in Nancy and in Korea. That we have one or two labs that will have a lot of overlap, but people going to John's lab and my lab wouldn't even think about talking to each other probably, and the same with Bernard would be different again. So I can see it's a good idea to actually have for Europlanet to insist that the host institution set up some sort of small online discussion and tour of the laboratories and explain to people what they're going to do and how they need to prepare their samples before they come. And that might save a few hours or maybe a day, but I can't see it being more than that. But I'd like to hear what John has to say on that.
I'll start by saying one thing. We've only done one virtual visit and it was pretty much a disaster. And that's because you should think of what we do is much like a field site visit. It's recreating something and looking at a phenomenon, and so you kind of have to be there. If you're not, you're really not going to have any use, really. It doesn't really make any sense to me to try to do it virtually, unless, we haven't ever succeeded in doing it. And normally, pre-visit, we normally have rather long discussions with the group that's coming, technical discussions of exactly what we're doing. And that probably saves a lot of time anyway. So normally day one when they arrive, we're already getting everything ready. We don't need to have these discussions again. We sort of have a plan. And so that process already kind of exists, that by the time they arrive, we've already discussed enough and explained enough. And normally I get my laptop and show them bits of it. So that sort of, and that's a feedback kind of thing. I'm thinking, could you replace that with some kind of tutorial? Maybe you could make a short video tutorial, but I don't think you can replace the thing of us trying to understand what they're bringing and the people coming understand our facility. That requires a conversation, which we don't charge for that. It normally takes us a day, but that's not anything we ever charge for. So.
I think the only thing that I would say is that, if we're looking at the 40-odd laboratory facility, or the 40-odd facilities that we've got in Europlanet, I think we should be looking at the diversity of things that we have and whether nothing is going to be one size fits all. Yours is a different kettle of fish to almost everything else, and so within the rest of things, I don't know what Bella thinks about his. I don't know what Susan. I mean, you have experience of many different facilities or OU facilities and other bits and pieces. So,
what OU does is a lot like what we do. I think Manish would have said the same thing that I just told you.
But nano sims. yeah. So, you know, I mean, there's 4 facilities there.
We're not, there are people online, so please use the microphones, sorry.
Yeah, for the case of nanosims, in terms of the sample preparation, in terms of guiding people to the sample, I think people need to be there for that. This is very difficult to do it virtually, but maybe not impossible, but extremely difficult.
So I think there's a few analytical based labs like mine, and some of the ones in Nancy, maybe a few at the OU, where it is viable to do things virtually because people can be trained online and we can show them how it works and then we can leave them run it. And we've managed to do, I think, 3 visits at my institute where we've done that, and we've made. But it then meant we hired a student to do the sample prep before they did the analysis. So in some cases it will work, but probably in most it won't.
But in the context of our baseline small transnational access program that will be useful to people from underrepresented countries, to early career researchers, that doesn't cost a lot and is something that we can kind of demonstrate the capacity with. Is it not those simpler facilities that maybe, I mean, if they're willing, I mean, that's another question entirely, but if they might be willing, you know, is that somewhere where we should be looking rather than the more exciting and more expensive and more complicated ones? That maybe if we started small with the simplest facilities that we have, and then got something stable working there, and then tried to build outwards.
That's a question I've been putting through my mind, because I'm thinking, do we have all the, you know, we have 40 facilities, well, the 20, was it 20, 23, 27 plus those in Korea. Would we offer them all or not? And how would we make that decision? That was something I haven't raised yet because I had no idea how to approach answering that question. Do we just say, okay, the cheapest ones because it's easier to fund? But
well, exactly, the ones that are willing to participate is the first hurdle.
Yeah. But then we've then got to have but at the moment nobody can commit to that until we know what sort of funding model are we going to say, okay, Gareth, your lab, if you want to be involved, you've got to pay, if somebody comes for a week, you've got to cover 2 days. I mean, these sort of things we have to have clear before we can have the discussion with people, and sort of so that they know what we're signing them up to.
That may be a model in, if you can get like 10 facilities that would be willing to put some money on the table to, you know, as we talked about was it this morning or yesterday? You know, you value the fact that you can have collaboration, etc. You have this running for a couple of years, maybe with the 10 odds facilities that are willing to put a bit of money on the table for the pilot. You publish like, I don't know, 20 nature projects, then maybe the other facility is saying, maybe this is something I'd like to subscribe to as well.
Sounds great. Just that we have to be realistic that the turnaround time of somebody coming to do a project is not 6 months. I mean, the publications will take, as we see. Many of you don't realize, last week we talked to the commission and we got told off for some of our publications that we've actually claimed as part of the project. We obviously put them in wrong because we're still getting lots and lots of publications from the previous RI, and we're now three years past the end of that, but papers are still coming out in good journals because people used the data, worked it up, maybe followed up with some other work and then published it. And so yes, it's a nice idea, and okay, if we have nice high impact papers that can come out quickly, that would be great, but we won't get that many in a couple of years because people often, there will be a PhD student will come halfway through their PhD and they won't write up the paper for a year or two when they finish the thesis.
I mean, if you're going to make the case from that, surely we can make a much better case from the TA program that we've been running for 13 years.
Yes, I think that's better.
And the high impact things that come out of that. And so, I mean, I think there is quite a good argument to see whether we can persuade a small number of TA facilities, and not necessarily the most whizzy and exciting and expensive ones, to put some money on the table and see whether they could do something. But we need to make this, we need to have a really, really, really compelling case about shared access to facilities.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be transnational access, but shared access to facilities and the benefits of collaboration that come out of that. If we can't write that, then we're sunk.
Yeah. I think you maybe missed some of the discussions we had earlier about, we were discussing approaching our senior management and then going to the space agency level, and how we've got to plan to do that coherently and properly.
No, I was in that
bit, what case are we going to make and how we're going to sell it? And there was understandably quite a lot of negativity coming back in the, CNRS probably won't approve, and the Italian Space Agency probably will just say, well, what's in it for us?
Mm-hmm.
So we really have to have a very good, clear case. Yeah. That's something we stressed. I encouraged everybody to talk to their direct line of management in their department and get them to start to think about, how are we going to cope? How is the university, the institute, CNRS, whatever, DLR, how are they going to cope with this concept of co-funding that the EU is now, or the Commission is now starting to throw around? Have they picked that up yet on the radar? And if so, how are they thinking about dealing with it? And I'm sure they'll all throw their hands up in horror, but maybe it's the reality of where we're going.
Bella, have you put in your tuppence worth? You have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Mm.
I missed
and
that.
Unfortunately, it was.
No.
Yeah. It was difficult, but we were using that as an example of, it's not just Bella's institute. Obviously, they've invested, the government has invested a lot there, and for them to be involved in the consortium so that people come and use it is good. But the other added value is that other members of the Hungarian community can come and use my facility or whichever facility they want. John?
Another thing about approaching ESA is that ESA is split up into different parts, and I really only have experience with the exploration program. I don't really know much about the science program, so maybe that's also part of who do we approach at ESA.
Who's
here tomorrow? Anita, do you know from ESA? Or is it...
Chilla is here, not here in the room. Chilla Orgel, she's from the human exploration and human and robotic exploration. What? Yeah, but we.
But they're the guys I know.
But I mean, we can talk presumably to Luigi and to Fabio Fata, who we at least we kind of have long-standing informal links from the science directorate.
That's a good idea.
No.
Yeah, no, but I mean, one thing I'm going to do, I know the Danish delegate to the exploration program, so I'm going to talk to that guy, those people, that lady, both of them. So, I mean, what we want is somehow for them to get together in a meeting and to discuss this issue, and for each of them to have been approached by their own constituents.
Yeah. But we must be careful not to do that too quick.
No, not too quick and not clumsy and not
Yeah.
clumsily. We should do it in an intelligent way, and I guess the way to do it intelligently is to approach people that you know. That is definitely a good idea. I mean, yeah, Luigi, for example, yeah. Anybody we know at ESA, it's a good idea to ask them. How do we start asking them?
Yeah.
Your
You know.
space science.
Yeah, so we've tried to, it's come up a few times already, like MSR, ESA, etc. So we actually have so ESA is aware of the problem. You know, there's not enough money to fund the laboratories to keep the teams running, etc. So ESF has been approached by ESA, so we are doing it with Jean-David, to run a survey on the capabilities of Europe with respect to Mars sample return. So they will do that over the next 6 months, and the main point that they're trying to figure out is what's the status of the capability in Europe, and what's also the status for the funding. So they're aware of the problem. So maybe something, so we'll do that for MSL, but maybe there are some other areas of research that is also the case, and there's a case to be made that we need more funding because there are some exciting challenges that are going to come up in the next decade or something. So maybe instead of trying to figure out how to fund a project, we can maybe try to figure out a way to sell a science case that we can answer through Europlanet.
Yeah. I absolutely wouldn't approach them asking for money. That was not ever my point. My point is we should go to them and say, we have this list of facilities. You should be using us. There you are. You're welcome. Do that first, and then say that this is an opportunity for your industry partners, subcontractors, to use us, and they could do that. That doesn't cost them anything directly. I don't expect to ever get direct money from ESA. Well, I've just had an ESA contract, but I mean, that's answering a particular specific question, right?
Maybe you can ask that questions, and you say, like, you ask that question to ESA, and you say, I can answer it, I just need money. And by the way, for the MSR, they're not promising to fund anything. They're just trying to identify the problem, to approach some funding bodies, national or Europeans, etc., try and identify some ways to fund the problem.
Just a quick announcement regarding this ESA consultation. I will be at Goldsmith Conference to interview people in person there. So if you have colleagues that you think would be important in this and would be interesting to talk, don't hesitate to ask them to contact the ESF and me and Jonas in particular. Thank you.
You really want us to tell people to contact you rather than you contact them?
Tell us who we might contact.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, that was.
Sorry, yes, that's more the point. Please tell us who to contact. Sorry.
Yeah.
Rephrasing. This phrasing is important.
Yes. I just wanted to check that I did get that the right way around. Okay. So the message there was to tell the ESF who we think are good people currently active, so then they can talk to them. If they announce ESA's thinking about consulting, then everybody will go, and then it could become impossible to manage. Right. I'm running out of energy. I don't know how you guys are doing. Go on, Jonas.
No, just maybe the same point for ESA. So what we discussed for the VA services, providing services to space agency.
Yeah.
So they have a specific problem that they can address, and they can provide the service to the agency. So like Vespa for NASA to make the data more accessible, and you can sell that services. So maybe that's also some way you can, sell your TA network as a way to answer a specific need from. It doesn't need to be ESA. It could be like maybe CNES or NASA or other space agency. Maybe even the international partners, India, the United Arab Emirates, that are trying to do some stuff on Mars and maybe interested in accessing the network.
The network is free.
For now.
So, yes. But only if they ask specific, what is a specific task, or otherwise they use it as it is free. So it is not always easy. Sometimes just say, okay, but we can use.
There are a few people online. Do you have any questions, anything you wish to ring up? It's your last chance before we'll start wrapping up, I think. No indication. Okay. I'm sorry, we never expected to reach any sort of a consensus. We really are in an early stage of just thinking this through and trying to think where we're going to go and how we're going to do it. We're going to repeat a lot of this again tomorrow. So you please think through and absorb what we've been discussing, because tomorrow we're going to put it into the context, not so much of Europlanet, but in terms of how are we going to keep the space RI going for the next 2 decades? And so we're going to be raising exactly the same sort of questions. And again, if anything, the funding becomes even more of a problem, because there we've got huge radio telescopes, we've got loads and loads of accelerators, and the cost of running those makes my lab look, Mickey Mouse, and I think it's quite high tech. But okay, compared to what some of those are going to offer, we're going to be looking at totally different levels of funding. So to keep the space RI going in 6, let's assume it does get funding and we want to fund it again in 6 years, 5 years time, there we're going to be looking at matching funds at 25% of 15 million. So, how are we going to do that? So that's the discussion tomorrow, which is going to be even bigger. So again, we're going to be talking about contacting all the space agencies and ESA and the national forum. So we're going to come back to the same issues, I'm sure. But so we need to, hopefully they might have other ideas of the other research infrastructures will have different contact people, and they might have other ideas of how to go about this, and maybe we can learn from each other, which is the whole point of why we set this up. So we would brainstorm today, and then tomorrow we'll see if we can learn from each other on how to go about doing this. Anybody wish to say anything else? Otherwise, I'd say, well, it's 5:05, but I think that's a good enough time to talk. There's somebody waving it's okay. Somebody was waving the microphone, but I didn't want to use it. Okay. I think we should finish there then. I thank all the online people for staying in. I hope you've learned something, found it interesting, stimulating, and I hope you can come up with some ideas. Please send things through to if anybody has any thoughts, how should we coordinate this, Anita? Should we send them all to the Europlanet office? Send them to Shush?
What I would suggest is that, like with all these challenges, we have a giant Google Doc where everybody puts thoughts and ideas down, and so then it's all in one place. I don't think, firing off a bunch of emails, stuff is going to get lost.
Yeah. Okay.
And then also you don't get the opportunity for people to comment and discuss. So I would do it as a Google Doc. I think it's probably easiest to do it as Google rather than SharePoint, because then if people don't have access to our SharePoint, then at least it's there and accessible. And also if all the challenges are on Google Docs, then we also know where they all are too. So yeah, I think that's the first step. I think the second step is, we'll have a bit of a summary and catch up on Friday. I think we need to set a deadline in September. Where
you'll be pleased to know that we already said that.
Okay, good. Where we can kind of follow up with I'm going to talk to so-and-so, that we can catch up on that. And then from there we need a timeline for the rest of the year. But
okay, so the Google Doc, does everybody know where it is and how to find it?
Is there one, or is there one related to the TA challenge? I don't know. I will. If there isn't one already, then I will set one up now. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be on the Woover channel for your specific challenge. I don't remember which one is it, like 6 or.
Okay. Has anybody actually looked at it yet? Because I haven't. I must confess.
Hang on, we're just looking now. Capacity building in policy and jail, sustainable access to. Facilities and field sites. No, there is nothing on there. Okay, I'm going to set up a Google Doc now,
Yeah.
and I will post the link in there, and I will also, so I can also circulate it by email to
That would be
you
good.
people.
Old-fashioned idiots like me prefer that.
Okay. Okay.
Also, because the screen's bigger.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I think we'll stop there. So my understanding is sort of 10 to 7 people are meeting to head off to the tram to go up for dinner. Some of you may decide you're going to take taxis, but you can organize that yourself. But 6:45, 7 o'clock, because it's 7:30 start. Is that correct, Anita? Yeah. 7. So I think 10 to 7, you're going to be there early. If you leave about then, you'll probably be there by 15:15. So you can then have a look at the views and relax and recover from the getting a bit hot walking up the hill. It's not super steep, but it's pretty warm out there at the moment. Okay. So we'll convene again tomorrow morning, and then we'll be focusing much more on the Space RI. There will be a few more presentations and to put into context what the other RIs are delivering. And I now need to panically check and see if I'm supposed to give a presentation tomorrow or not. Okay, thanks very much. And again, the people at the back, thanks very much for your help and doing such a good job.